Yeah, well, we're talking about Deion Sanders, and I think what makes him such a great coach is, one, his reputation, and so people want to come play for him, right?
Yeah.
But so he's able to attract some talent that maybe Colorado couldn't attract before. But more than that, I think what's happening is it's what he does for his players. It's how he treats his players. We were talking about balance and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is that when something goes wrong in practice or in a game, Deion Sanders isn't throwing Gatorade tubs and yelling at people, right? I saw a thing what he does is he elevates his players and he makes them believe that they can be something better than they are.
That's the word right
and
there.
Guess what?
Yep.
They go out there and do it.
That's the word that I've been using is believe. He made those kids believe they could do it.
He makes them believe that
Yep.
they can win every game. Pete Carroll's the same way.
Yeah.
And I saw something on social media, I think it was on Instagram or something, and it was one of his receivers was having a rough game, and his dad's in prison, and Deion pulled him on the sidelines, came up to him, put his arms around him, and goes, "Your dad is watching this game right now.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to stand up and shout in prison that that's his boy. You can do this."
Yeah.
And that kid is the kid that caught the pass that tied the game with Colorado State.
That's amazing,
and took it to
man.
overtime.
And okay, so we're going to tie this knot, all right? When you can convince people that they can do it,
Yeah.
like those guys went 1-11, and now he cleaned house.
Yeah,
he
sure.
went in there with an attitude, and I mean, Deion Sanders has got some tude. I mean,
Sure.
he walks tall. But he walked into that room. I don't know if you saw the whole thing where he was standing there meeting the team for the first time, but he told them basically half of you guys ain't going to play here. Half of you guys are going to pack your shit because you ain't willing to hold the line that I'm going to set. Right?
Well, what he's doing is what we did in Fighter Squadrons. He is setting a standard.
That's right.
And you either meet the standard or you don't. And if you don't meet it, you're not going to be here.
Boom, you're gone. And so half of them left, half of them entered the portal and whatnot. So he goes out and he gets his people. He surrounds himself with people who believe in him and believe in the mission and believe in the standard. And then he convinced them, you can do this.
That's right.
And they went down there and whipped TCU's ass.
They sure
Like,
did.
they embarrassed those dudes, man. And I think they're the best. That by far, that is the best story in sports right now.
Yeah, I would
I
agree.
think it's by far.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of bravado, obviously. I'm sure Deion has a pretty big ego.
But he can back it up, though.
Well, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, that's what he's doing is he's instilling belief in those players and in that culture. And like when guys see themselves elevate in performance and personally because you've set a standard, guess what starts to happen, man? Things start to get, that high performance team starts to increase in performance very quickly.
Well, let's go back to the resiliency that we were just talking about, right? Their strengths of schedule is starting to get a little rougher.
Sure.
They got Oregon, and then they're going to have to play USC, and I don't know if that one's on the road, but I'm pretty sure Oregon's on the road. I mean, they're going into some environments where they may not be favored to win. What happens if they lose? And then what's the messaging after the loss? And how do they bounce back from that? I'm kind of waiting to see that because it's sort of inevitable, right? I don't think that they are the team that's going to run the table this year.
Sure.
Maybe not this year. In Deion's words, he needs about 6 or 7 more dogs on that team. He's got a good team, and those kids play, and they play their guts out. Did you watch the double overtime win the other night?
I did not.
It was freaking awesome, dude. Like, just to watch those kids come back from down 11 in the fourth quarter to win it in overtime, they never once thought that they were going to lose that game.
Yeah. But just to correlate this, though, back to the podcast, like, this is what I'm trying to do, and I think you are too, with this platform. Is, guys, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like, we believe in you.
with that.
Like, you've got the ability to make these things happen in your life and for yourself. You can achieve this stuff. You can be great. You're better than you think you are. You have more talent and more capability than you believe you do.
Well, that's a great point, dude. Like, how many kids or how many people, not even kids, how many people will sit here and listen to us talk and pontificate in these microphones for hours at a time and sit there and say to themselves, well, that's great, but that ain't me. Or I can't do that. You were given an opportunity when you joined the Air Force. I've heard that so many fucking times, man. Like, well, I didn't have the same opportunities you did in my life. Bullshit, man. I made those opportunities.
Yeah,
and the next episode that we're going to do, I don't know if you know this now, but
Opportunities.
it's going to be on opportunities.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about some of that stuff about how opportunities. You make opportunities. You create opportunities with your preparation, with your mindset, with the way that you go into things. And some of it is timing. I'll give you that. But you don't get to the levels that we're at by just sitting there and waiting for life to catch you. You go out and fucking do shit.
Yeah, and it's not like I was confident in everything that I went into. Officer training school, when I got on that airplane and showed up in Montgomery, Alabama, I was like, Jesus, what have I done, right? Going into pilot training, do I really have the fortitude? Do I really have the skill to do this, right? Going to F-16 RTU. I'll never forget when I went to weapons school, I drove up from Arizona because I was stationed out here. And I was coming up, I don't remember, 89 or whatever it is that comes, and you kind of crest that hill, and then you're on that southeast corner of Vegas, and you
start to see the lights and shit, yeah.
I'll never forget, I popped that hill, and I saw Vegas in front of me, and I was like, what the fuck have I done? Because I knew I was going to get my nuts kicked. I was like, am I even going to be here in 2 weeks? Yeah. You know? Because it's brutal. You get your nuts kicked in constantly. But you do it. You go, you give it the effort, you take the chance, you seize the opportunity, and you do the best you can.
I've got a great story on just how I was coaching a 12-year-old team, a junior high team, and the first few practices, I'm the new guy. I don't know any of these kids. They don't know me, and I'm out there kind of evaluating what I've got as part of a team. That the head coach that got me to come on and be the offensive coordinator with them. The next practice, after he asked me to be part of their team, the next practice for the next 3 weeks, he ghosted me and left me there all by myself. So I'm kind of silently evaluating these players and what do I got and who goes where and that kind of stuff. I don't know anybody on this team. It's just me and Caleb. We're brand new to Phoenix, brand new to this football team. So after a couple of weeks or a few practices, I rallied them all up and I said, guys, I don't know what our competition is going to look like, but we've got a solid crew here. And I think we can make a run if you guys are willing to do the work. I can promise you I'll do my part. If you guys want to make a run for it, we can do this, right? And every one of them in that huddle said, all right, coach, bet. And we threw down, and man, practices were hard, and I coached hard, and I prepared hard, and those kids worked their butts off, and they did everything that we asked them to, and we won the championship game undefeated, going away with a pick six. And my messaging at the end of it was, see, I told you you could do it. You just had to do the work. And they freaking did, man. It was awesome. Yeah. So to get these kids, regardless of who you're mentoring in your life, and this goes to our generation, right? Whoever you're mentoring in your life, that's a giant part of it, is you convince them that they can do this.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's what Deion's done with the Buffaloes. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and you do. I mean, we did it in fighter squadrons too. I remember as a weapons officer, as an IP, you might have, especially as a patch, because you end up flying with guys that are struggling a lot, you know. And I would sit down with them. I'm like, dude, we can do this, right? You have the ability to do this. These are the things you have to focus on. Here's where I need you to fix the errors, right? Here's the left hand, here's the right hand. 1, 2, 3, let's go. You can do this. Yeah. You have the ability. You got this. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have the ability to do it. And so you just got to have a little confidence in yourself. Let's go out and execute. Yeah. You know, and then they do, and you come back in the debrief and you're high-fiving them and you're like, dude, that was awesome. Yeah. You know, here's 3 great things that you did today. And you build them up, you build them up, you build them up. Sometimes you have to tear them down a little bit too. And we've talked about where egos can get in the way, and sometimes you have to tear down a little harder every once in a while. But yeah, that's how you do it, man.
That's what I was kind of trying to get there with our talk with Alicia was, you know, these kids that have had this constant messaging their entire life that you're the best, you're just awesome. You remember Hangman? He's probably been told that his entire life, right? And maybe you were good, you know, maybe you were the star at your football team, but that doesn't necessarily translate into real life necessarily. Like I know guys who are star football players who are now landscapers, and not bagging on landscapers, but you went from a pedestal to a minimum wage job. Now you could have maybe done more. You could have risen up and just continued your trajectory into life. But if your messaging has always been you're great, you're awesome, you're the best, what has been your incentive to have a growth mindset up to that point?
Yeah, or how do you handle failure when it finally happens?
That's exactly it.
Like overcome that.
You are not the kind of person that has the tools and the skills to be able to deal with that shit.
Exactly. Well, and if your ego is big because you've been fed that messaging, the break that happens to your ego when you buy the big L finally could be pretty severe. And again, that's what this podcast is about. It's about how do I What are the things that I need to do to build the skills to move into and understand what I want to be about, who I want to be, and how I want to show up in this world? How do I walk through this world with my own integrity? How do I make good choices for myself? How do I walk into those opportunities and be courageous and be vulnerable? Like, that's what we're getting at.
We didn't even talk about perfectionism.
God, big brain in the room has got to start throwing big words again.
No, but like
Perfection. Turn the mic so you can hear it.
Whoa. Hey, some of what you're talking about, perfectionism is very much based on people with shame, because it's based on external motivation and not the internal healthy striving. And so there's a big difference between perfectionism and healthy internal striving, which I think is what you're getting at. But it makes me think of that saying, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who? Somebody famous said that.
I don't know.
Henry Ford or somebody.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Somebody really famous. We talked about that in one of the last few podcasts when we were sitting here. We were talking about perfection and how it's unattainable and all that. But the way that I used to frame it, I don't know if you heard this or not, but the way that I used to frame it to my kids was, I want you to strive for perfection, but accept excellence. And I framed it to them like this: if you go into every exam trying to make 100, that's an awesome goal. If you make a 98, that's pretty fucking good too. Mm-hmm. Right? So shoot the moon. Mm-hmm. You might hit it. You might come up just a little bit short, but you're still winning.
Yeah, it's mindset, man.
Yeah. This was supposed to be all about football, and then we got off doing a whole nother fucking episode, but whatever.
You didn't record.
Yeah.
It's not my fault.
Right. Well, I'm going to just wrap it up with a big Roll Tide. We got Ole Miss this weekend, and this is going to be one of those resilient battles for Nick Saban and his team down there. They took an L to Texas, and then they didn't really perform at a great level last week against USF. So I'm looking forward to that one this weekend.
Go Hawks.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one for you guys. All right, we'll end it on that. See ya.